Mwahahaha! So you found yourselves in our domain, searching for forbidden lore to help you conquer the world. I knew it was only a matter of time before the forces of good showed up at my doorstep. But while my minions distracted you, I and my band of ne'er-do-wells infiltrated your precious cathedral and shattered the last crystal tethering your holy deity to our plane. Evil has prevailed, and now your universe will crumble. We shall impart our knowledge of playing evil campaigns tonight on Playing Satan. I'm Dreadlord Logie, and sitting on a digital throne of skulls is Xander. A baby slod is still a slod, Nolan.
Hey, man.
So Xander, the most important part in running or playing in an evil campaign is setting boundaries and what evil is acceptable to let loose upon the inhabitants of your world. Tell us why setting these expectations is even more important than it usually is when running a campaign.
When you begin an evil campaign, you set the precedent that things are going to go very, very badly for the good guys. Because of that, you inadvertently cause out-of-game stress because people aren't naturally evil. So, because of these things, you have to set firm boundaries and expectations about what is and is not allowed at your game table, how graphic you want to be, and all of those things. It's even more important for an evil campaign because it can make players uncomfortable, just by its very nature.
Right, so dropping the silly voice that I was doing, but let's talk about this seriously. You immediately
Indeed.
brought up a great point because with evil campaigns, this is where you got to get these expectations down pat before you start the game, pretty much. Like
Oh,
you have
yeah.
to get this all laid out before anybody even creates a character because you since you're establishing evil and you know you're going to do dickhead things to your NPCs or possibly even the other players, then you got to come at it more with more sensitivity than you usually would. You have to establish first what's allowed at the table. Are you okay with a chaotic evil character who will just straight up start stabbing the first NPCs you put into the game? Is this supposed to be a more serious evil roleplay game where it's not just about wanton destruction here and there, but you're actually like having this big story unfold as you're playing it? What extent is your evil portrayed? Are you going to be explicit about what happens? Like if somebody decides that their version of interrogating one of the paladins that they captured is very graphic torture, would you allow that? Would you allow
Yeah.
those kind of descriptions?
It's definitely a gray area, in my opinion.
And that's pretty
Um,
much what this whole thing's about. So how would you
yeah.
handle something like this, Xander, if you were going to run one of these
Well,
games?
one of the things that I look for whenever I'm about to run an evil campaign, which I've only done once, and it's definitely a really hard campaign to run, especially as a GM, but it's even harder for players to get past certain kind of thresholds and milestones about what evil is versus what, chaotic ridiculous is. When you're looking at an evil campaign, a the whole stabbing the first NPCs that you come across and just wanton destruction. It's the same kind of deal as like a meat grinder. It has its time and its place, and it can be fun. But the purpose of role playing games and things like that is to tell a decent story. This story is just the other side of the table. When your players sit down to run your average campaign, the heroes are running around, thwarting evil and stuff like that. This is a campaign where they do the same thing. They're just doing the evil things, not the good things. It's the same kind of deal. They still should have trials and tribulations. They should still have NPCs that they talk to on a regular basis and things that are cordial, because being evil doesn't necessarily mean a monster. Being evil just means you go about doing things in a way that's amoral or goes against a certain kind of moral compass.
Yeah, we've
That's
we've
the
all
real
heard the line
difference.
like the greatest monster is people, and like
Yeah.
you don't have to have a snarling, uh, dark character that comes out of the shadows with a blood dripping knife. You could have a politician who looks really suave on the outside, but when you look behind the scenes a little bit, he could be a real manipulative piece of shit who maybe like does various lobbying things or just throws his competition in like a pit somewhere just to keep them out of the city. Like you could come up with all sorts of evil shit that you could do. Um,
Yeah.
but the important part as the GM is to really lay out what you specifically are comfortable with at your table and actually like talk to all your players simultaneously about this. You can't
Absolutely.
yeah, this is a big like session 0, everybody's at the table. We got to hash this stuff out because maybe if
Yeah.
90% of the table is perfectly all right with a topic that we've discussed before with that I don't put in my games but other people might is any kind of like sexual assault, that kind of thing. If 90% of your players are cool with that, but the last 10% aren't, then you shouldn't
The
have
ten
it.
percent wins.
Or or
Yeah.
or they might if they're if everybody is going into this game expecting that to be the thing, maybe they shouldn't play at all because if that's
Yeah.
going to be really uncomfortable for them, which I mean, that's a reasonable thing to get really comfortable about along with a lot of stuff in evil campaigns.
Oh
if
yeah.
if you can't show anything, then there's no point in an evil campaign. But if
Yeah.
there's a few things that I'm sure everybody will agree on that to just stay away from, and that's where you decide which parts of the evil are going to be fade to black and which are going to be more explicit. So
Hmm.
even when I run regular games where I assume my players are good guys, then there's a few scenes that I'll pretty much always fade to black just because we don't need to roleplay it. I don't want to describe the scene and a couple other reasons. But like sex scenes, all those just fade to black. We don't need to get into detail about that because my games are usually about heroic adventures. But there are some tables, even some of my closest friends, they love having the kind of almost like a dating sim as part of their D&D game. I won't do that. That's not really fun for me, but if they love it, that's what they should do. And they might actually go into explicitly describing a scene like that, much like the example we brought up earlier with the torture paladin. Then
Yeah.
maybe that's something that if your players like are going to do and it makes sense in the game, then you fade that to black. Have them roll like intimidate or something. Don't explicitly say what's going on, but then when the scene fades back in, it's like one of those gathering scenes in like a Fast and the Furious movie where a guy walks into the room and he's like, "Okay, I got the information," and then you just go from there.
Yeah, and they're like now they're working on the cars kind of deal. Um, a good thing to do, a general rule of thumb, when you're setting up for an evil campaign, is you need to be free to let some of the darker aspects of your game kind of unfold. But one of the issues that you're going to come across, especially with more inexperienced players, which we'll get to later on, is the difference between being dark and seedy and a bit evil about your actions versus just being a plain out dick about things. There's a time and place to be a dick in a game. It should be moment by moment, not a entire character concept, and it also shouldn't be a play style for the GM either.
Yeah, you're all gathered here to play a different kind of campaign or like, mini-sode or whatever it is, even a one-shot. And you don't want to bog the game down and bog the rest of the players down with just mundane dickitude. If your character is one of the ones that steals from literally everyone they come across, you know, that's kind of okay because it's an evil campaign, but be wary to dial that back as a player, especially if you're
Yeah.
dominating what's happening in the game because at the end of the day, there's an end of the day. So you have a limited amount of time you're sitting here at the table, whether it's for one session or several, and you want to get the most out of that time. If you're just sitting there, just being aggressive and combative for it to everybody in the game for no reason other than because it's an evil campaign or because for shits and giggles, then calm down with that. Figure out a way to divert your evil into a more productive aspect of the game.
Yeah. One of the other things that you can look at and kind of take from other games that you have played or possibly even GM'd is a dark campaign is just like a regular campaign in that you're probably going to have to do dungeon crawls because the guy that you're working for needs this amulet and this amulet is supposed to raise dead and stuff like that. You're going to get that amulet and there's monsters inside. You've got to kill them. There might be good aligned quote unquote adventurers inside. You've got to kill them and you've got to get this amulet and bring it back. the evil aspect is mostly in the role play, quote unquote, rather than the actual way the game itself is being played. You're still going to do all of those classic things. You're still going to have to lockpick. You're still going to have to do all of the stuff that your characters would normally do. You're just doing it for a reason that is evil.
And with
That's
the
the
if
difference.
you took that scenario and because you could look at that same thing from a good lens and a evil lens, looking through it through a good lens obviously just sounds like a regular D&D adventure with a dungeon crawl and everything. But if you look at it through the evil lens specifically, yeah, sure, it kind of at surface value seems like it's just another dungeon crawl. But you got to remember that you're evil, so you're not going into a dungeon filled with evil shit. You're going into a dungeon filled with probably good people or
Yeah,
like
guards.
yeah,
Lots of
you
guards.
go into the king's castle because he's got the amulet locked down in a vault like that's deep underground the castle. You got to go through the town guard. How are you going to get through that town guard? Do you want to
Yep.
alert the entire city to the fact that you're trying to raise an undead army with the help of your evil bro who's acting as your quest giver? Like there's a lot you could think of going into an encounter like this where
Yeah.
you could have moral quandaries if you have maybe characters who might be on the fence on the whole good and evil thing. Um,
Hmm.
if you're specifically doing an evil campaign, I'd say just to lean into it because that's the whole point of this. You are letting the dark side free. So you are going to just be like, "Oh, that guy's got a family and like 6 kids or whatever."
Screw
Well,
it.
he is in my way and he's the last guard and he does have the combination to the vault on him, so shank.
Yeah. The flavor and the way you set up the encounters as a dungeon master should give your characters the opportunity to make decisions that would allow them to let that evil flow. One of the examples that I would give would be if you're in a situation where your characters have to escape from a prison. They need to get from their cells out of the castle. It's a pretty straightforward prison break
Also,
style kind of
so they
game.
got caught trying to get the amulet. Now they're in prison.
Maybe. Maybe. But the difference between a quote unquote good aligned campaign versus an evil aligned campaign is whether or not you enforce or encourage your players. I wouldn't say enforce, encourage your players to either just subdue the enemies and get out because killing a bunch of guards will only make them follow you that much more, versus an evil campaign where these dudes are in my way, they caught me, I don't care about their lives, I'm going to kill them.
Well, you could
So,
also like let free
yeah.
with like the spells that are real, like you wouldn't use
Oh,
normally because
yeah.
they're terrible to do to people. Like
Oh,
you use shit. What's the spell that all you literally do is point at somebody and then they are racked with pain for like an entire minute? Like I can't remember what the spell
shit.
is, but yeah, that's all you do. They make a will save, or they get in incredible pain for the duration of the spell. That's all you're doing to them. They just
Yep.
crumple on the ground, and they're just like all their nerves are firing, and you're just like, yeah, that's what you deserve for keeping me in here for 5 hours, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And then,
I would say that to encourage dialogue as well between both good guys and your players, because when the good guys are trying to make a point that follows a moral compass that most people quote unquote would agree with, you have the opportunity as a player and a GM to put them into a position where they don't have to care about that moral compass and whether or not
exactly.
this is a good thing to do. No, fuck you, dude. You're in my goddamn way,
I
Shank.
don't care if
Yep.
you're the Holy Order of Ilmater. Get out of my fucking shit. Like you're in my face.
Yep.
Now you're in hell. Goodbye.
No, or in heaven probably.
No,
Um,
you didn't kill him. You actually used the high level plane shift spell to send them to hell. So
oh,
that
that
way,
sucks.
the inherent nature of the abyss starts twisting their shit around. So then they become evil characters.
Oh, that's vicious. I love it. Um, another thing that you have to kind of balance when you're dealing with an evil campaign, more so than you do with a good aligned campaign, is how to handle PvP.
All
When
right,
you
so
have a
you took a hard left turn into that, but here's what we're setting up. So you're all playing evil characters. Yeah, we get it. You're stabbing everything else that moves, but eventually your characters being evil, they're probably going to think, you know, that the anti-paladin just got a fucking sweet sword and he doesn't have his armor on. I'm playing a rogue and he's asleep right now. oh, that sneak attack dice is looking real sexy right about now, and then you
Yep.
stab him. But how do you
Yeah.
handle that?
Well, the way I have always looked at it is PvP, regardless of whether or not you're on a good aligned side or a bad aligned side, PvP is generally a no-no with most of the games that I run. There's a time and place for it with certain games and certain GMs, but the way to handle it is the same way you would if you were to allow it in a good aligned campaign. Keep things relatively civil, and let your players know that while PvP is accepted and it's something you can do, that this is make believe. It's just a game. Don't get upset and butthurt because your character is getting shanked by another character that's sitting at the table. Because if you don't set up the scenario to allow it to happen freely, then you're going to end up with bad blood at the table, and that's the last thing that you want. It's one of the
Exactly.
easiest ways to destroy a campaign, good or
Even,
otherwise.
I mean, like, even if you are only taking fictional gold or fictional items, you are still undercutting a very real person who
Yep.
worked to get those things, or they really wanted them, or you're just taking away their character, because if you stab a dude, they're kind of dead. So
Yep.
you could just be taking away their character. But this is one of those things with PvP that I would definitely say go back to the first step in this, which is the figure out your expectations. Because Xander, you said that you would accept PvP, but maybe not encourage it. I would actually might go a bit further and say if you're doing an evil campaign and your players or they don't really want to participate in that, or you think that it just wouldn't bring anything fun to the table, you could straight up say just no PvP.
No PvP.
Like
Generally,
let people figure out what they are willing to accept, and you got to approach this entire thing from a meta point of view. You
yep.
you can't resolve this in play because uh, some characters would want to stab another character, and then the other character doesn't want to be stabbed, but they want to rob another character or whatever. You get all
Yeah.
sorts of weird arguments about something you should have just agreed on an out of play level. If
Yeah.
like even if it is a fully meta agreement that just says we are not going to participate in PvP against the player characters. You could participate in, well, it's not PvP anymore, but like interpersonal skullduggery with your NPC
Yeah.
buddies because they're just not real people. But if even if you have to say like our characters will not do this, even if it doesn't make sense, that's fine.
Yeah. Because one of the ways that I look at it, even if you're playing an evil campaign, your players, for whatever reason, have decided to ally themselves with each other. That alliance still holds true, whether it's a good or an evil aligned campaign. Their motivations and their characters' feelings toward other player characters may not always mesh well, just like in a good campaign. But they're driven by a common goal and something that they're all working towards as a cohesive unit. So PvP undermines that. And if you are a new GM or if you haven't played a game where PvP is allowed, my suggestion is to get a hold of a GM that's very experienced, has been doing it for a long time, and has ran games where they allow PvP, because they will have insights that that will help you along. But just deciding to allow PvP as a new GM will only make your game table just completely disintegrate, and you might even lose friends over it. Because while this is make believe, you still invest yourself into your characters, even if those characters are doing bad stuff. So my usual thing is PvP is not a thing unless you guys really want to do it, and then I know how to handle it. But it's very tenuous, very tedious, and it's really hard to get a solid nail on. So my suggestion is don't.
My suggestion would actually go a little further, actually, Xander. If you're a new GM, don't run an evil campaign. Period.
Oh, no, no, no,
Like,
absolutely,
do
absolutely
not.
not.
Like if you're thinking of running an evil campaign, GM for at least a year or
Yeah.
whatever. But here's a couple side notes from setting up an evil campaign. One,
Hmm.
do not ever start an evil campaign with randos, like random people, because
Oh no,
because
no,
the
no.
first step immediately fails. Because you're gathering your friends in order to collectively decide on what kind of evil you're willing to participate in. And
Hmm.
that works really well among friends who know each other, who probably played together in various games, and who generally know the style and just the personalities of the people they're playing with. So never ever do a evil campaign with strangers. Um, Also, don't do an evil campaign if you're new to just tabletop as a whole. I would actually also go so far as to say don't play in an evil campaign if you are new to tabletop games, uh, just at all. Even if it's like if it's your first one, absolutely not.
Probably a Yeah, probably a bad idea. Also, do not run or play in an evil campaign if you are not super familiar with the system. If you pick up a brand new system and you're like, oh, this looks like it would be fun, if you don't know what you're doing, at the very least as the GM, running an evil campaign will put so much more stress and weight on top of you if you're not like read the book forwards and backwards at least twice and you understand it from a metaphysical level. Like you can make rules calls on the fly and it still be accurate. Don't run an evil campaign. Just don't do
That's
it.
I don't know. That seems a little. All right. I mean, I don't even read all the frickin' rules when I run games, any game. So trying
But
to
you know it well enough.
yeah, but
You know
but
it well enough to do so.
a lot of times like the specific rules calls that you'd make on the fly generally won't matter if in a long term setting because one of the things that you really need to consider with an evil campaign, I'd say even more so than a regular campaign. I know Xander, you this is a big point for you, which is how long should the campaign last? And
Oh,
with evil campaigns, I'd say a one shot, maybe like 5 6 games tops, not like
yeah.
a full like multi-year campaign or anything
No,
like
no,
that.
don't do that. If you're gonna run an actual campaign, the way I've always kind of structured those kinds of things is when you're setting up for a normal campaign, you'll have story points along a given line that has from A to B being the end game, A being the starting point, but you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 points that they're going to meet. Just do it to one point. Just to the end of a single arc. Max 5, 6 games if you really want to run an evil campaign. But if you take it too long, it will create tension around the table. Even if you're really experienced as a GM and you have friends around the table that you've known and played with for a long time, evil campaigns put a lot of stress on both the players and the GM. Keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple. Don't go too crazy with it.
I'm sure some people would want to play like a full length evil campaign. And Susander, I don't exactly agree with it would cause too much tension because if I'm actually thinking of doing this, I'm coming at it like we could just play this for as long as we'd ever want to. It's just I think that after a certain amount of time, which is why I personally put a cap on how long it is kind of early on, is just because it might get boring or repetitive.
Might get stale.
Evil tends to be repetitive. You can only torture a dude so many times before it's just not exciting anymore. You can
Yeah.
only murder an entire orphanage, like or set a town on fire so many times before those flames are just a little boring to look at.
It's no more fun to set the players on fire and watch them run around. Yeah.
But I
Okay.
definitely agree with the short and sweet section of
Yeah.
it because, like, yeah, just make a short, memorable, fun experience, and then move on to another campaign. It might be another evil campaign, because evil campaigns are a perfect opportunity to just be like, hey, players, make level 15 characters,
Oh yeah.
and just
Let's
like
fuck
make it
shit up.
the most destructive piece of shit people in the universe show up
Yeah.
at this town, and you're flinging fireballs, or you've brainwashed the entire population into thinking you're a deity.
Yeah.
Like sky's the limit. You could unload those straight up. These are evil spells from the book.
Yeah, it's a really good one for like the power trip gaming. Once in a while, you want to as a player be like, yeah, I walked into this place. Everybody in this entire room, if they decided to pull some shit, would just get smushed under my boot. And you think those thoughts, even as a good aligned character, like I've had thoughts where as Kenton, just man, if I got into a bar fight, everybody would be screwed. And that's where you can do that. That's the perfect place to have someone who's so overpowered just smush everybody else. It could be super fun.
Yeah, it could be really fun. Something you could also do is this is something that I've toyed with the idea, but I've never managed to actually execute it. And it's have two campaigns running side by side, and you don't tell either side that this is happening. One side plays the bad guys, and you have a session for that to figure out what the fuck they're up to. And then you take
Then
what they did and you challenge the good guys with it.
that sounds awesome. It also sounds like a lot of
It
work
would
on
it
the
would be a
GM's
lot
part,
of
but that would
work.
be so much fun.
But I'm
That
not
could be
talking
so
about
much
like you
fun.
micro write down everything that one side does. You just like if the evil guys figure out a solution to something that you're like, "Oh, damn, that was creative." Then instead of you coming up with a solution that isn't as awesome, you just take that and when the good line party reaches the bottom of this castle to get the amulet for the or to protect against the guys who are getting the amulet for the lich. Yeah. Then they get down there and like, oh yeah, it's still there. No worries, we did it. And then one of the guys goes up and is like, you know what, this is looking a little see through. And then they like poke through it and it's like, oh shit, this is just an illusion. They've had it for a day already. Uh oh.
Ah, damn it. Yeah. See, that would be really fun. I've actually toyed with the idea of doing that once in a while, but you got to have a lot of players to do that kind of deal.
Yeah, that's why it's only been a theory, and yeah, because it
Mhm.
takes a lot of work, and you'd have to have two full groups, and
Yep.
it's a lot, but I think it would be fun to try for like
Yeah.
a mini campaign or something.
Yeah. As a final note, on the players themselves, when you're looking to run an evil campaign, and even if you're gonna pull Nick's idea of running two solo campaigns, one next to the other, kind of deal. Just remember that to maintain civility between all of your players, if things start to get heated and out of play, like anger and frustration, and people start raising their voices, just try to keep that down to a minimum. And if it gets like it's too much to handle, then don't feel discouraged to say, okay, look, we gave this a shot, this was fun, but we're going to have to cut this off because it's causing too many problems. Always try to put your players before the characters in the story, because in this instance, that's even more important,
You've
because
noticed that
this will hurt.
you've noticed that we have pretty much gone about this entire evil campaign podcast in terms of a meta level thing, and that's because that is where all of the I don't want to say action takes place, but where all of this could fall apart if you ever tried to do
Yeah.
it. Because I assume that you know how to play your characters. You're gonna
Oh
go
yeah.
in. You know how to be evil. You've seen enough TV. You watch enough Disney movies. If you want to go super comedically over the top, then like
Yeah.
you know how to actually play the game. You know how to play your character. But this, because if that scenario were to happen, like you need to be able to just be like, hit the brakes. We need to
Yep.
stop whatever's going on right now before people start getting actually pissed
Hmm.
off or actually too uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
then either just skip the scene, do a jump cut to whatever the next scene is, like take 5-10 minute out of play break because you always need those anyway.
Go have a smoke if you got them.
Like and
Just.
or if it really needs to be addressed, then like cut the in play discussion right then and there and say, okay, why are we having this issue? Like,
Hmm.
what's going on? Tell me how you're feeling. Like, you got to be real
Yes.
with the players. You got to address them directly, and you got to like whoever is having an issue. Like, if they don't want to talk in front of the whole table, then you take them aside. I'd hope that if they're
Yep.
playing an evil campaign, they would already be comfortable talking at the table with whoever's there. But if they're not, then
Yeah.
take them to the side, figure out what's going on. Like, take aside everybody to see what the hell's going on, and
Hmm.
then once you have all the perspectives and everybody's information, then you could decide what to do from there. Even if that is just a hard like redaction, or
Yeah.
if you need to scene skip or whatever.
Yeah. The same way that you would handle out of play problems between players for a good aligned campaign, it's the same way you would do it for an evil. It's just it's more likely to happen, probably by a pretty large factor in comparison, because yeah, you're evil, so you're doing bad shit, possibly to each other. That's gonna bad feels, bad feels all around sometimes. So don't feel afraid to do that. And if you can't do that as a GM, don't run one. Just save yourself the headache.
Yeah, usually I'm pretty open about what you're willing to do because personally I'm a very rebellious. Like you can't tell me what to do. Like if whenever somebody told me like you can make a character can make a joke, but a joke can't make a character, my first response is I'm gonna figure out how to make that work. So if but this is one of those things where it's just like I don't think you will actually have fun if you try to do this without being fully prepared going into it.
Yep. Like make sure your players know that you know everybody's on the exact same page. There's no gray area, places for misinterpretation, and you're working together to make it fun because the moment it stops being fun is the moment it's no longer going to work and you need to just stop
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And so there are actually different games that help encompass this. So when
Uh-huh.
we're not explicitly talking about Dungeons and Dragons, but that's mostly what we're getting at. So
Yeah.
with D&D specifically, that has like not all the time, depending on which edition you look at, but that usually has hard and fast rules on what is evil, what is good. These are objective things that you can quantify in the universe because angels and
Yeah.
devils and all that shit, they exist. It's proven they exist. Evil and good are a metaphysical aspect of reality. Now, there are other games that it might not be that, laid out for you. And if you're looking to run a game that is evil or even like just quasi evil, like maybe you just want to play a bunch of dickheads or something, then there are certain games that allow you to do that. One of it's not explicitly written this way, but one of the game systems that you could consider if you want to have the modern, the supernatural, or various other things mixing together is the World of Darkness system. That has morality in varying degrees, but it lets you, and so it helps you kind of determine what's good and what's bad within the universe. But you could just make a character that is a full on like what's a really low morality, like higher is better in that system, right? So like a 2 is really bad.
Yeah, two. I had a mage that was a two morality, and because of the way the system works, morality isn't necessarily a thing that's going to break your character. It's just dependent on whether or not, when you do something evil, you have checks and things like that that you have to make, and you'll lose willpower. But the lower your morality, the less willpower you'll use or lose, rather. That World of Darkness is a great place for a set of characters, like some that are good, a couple that are neutral, and maybe a dude or two dudes, or a straight up entire coven of mages that are just evil characters.
Well,
They do bad shit.
the other thing about the scale on World of Darkness is, if I remember correctly, when you get to that threshold, then you don't make checks further on certain things. Like, let's say you're
Yeah.
mage like, with rank 2, like you know, if I remember right, you no longer have to make checks on murdering people because you just
Nope.
don't care anymore. But if you're
Yeah.
morality 3, I think, then you still like it still hurts your soul to go out and just murder somebody. So you still make the check, but otherwise
Yeah.
it's just like if you're lower than that, you're like, I don't care anymore, and then you stab a dude.
Yeah. You stop caring whether or not there's no more mechanical penalty for it. But because of the World of Darkness and the way it's built, it's a very fluid system. You can go up and down on that scale fairly quickly and fairly simply. So playing an evil aligned campaign is a lot easier, especially considering it's a modern setting, quote unquote. As you could do it like older, futuristic, and all that stuff
It's
because
built to
you're the
be
GM.
modern, though. We're just going with face
But it's
value
it's
of the books right now.
yeah, it's built to be modern. So when your vampire who has been cultivating a small coven worth of wannabe vampires that go to these clubs and has been feeding on them, that's technically an evil action. It's something they're doing that's really bad and really immoral. But it's not only acceptable, it's even encouraged in the game. Like you could have points in herd. You're just feeding on people that are quote unquote aware or unaware that you're actually taking their life essence. It's built to be a little more dark, and it works well with evil campaigns. And with a World of Darkness campaign, you can stretch a evil to quasi evil campaign off into the sunset because the rule set works for that.
Yeah. A couple other just example systems that you can check out if you're looking to do a game that's more open to just having inherently evil characters. You could always use the more generic rule sets like GURPS or Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds especially is a very easy one to get into. and you can basically make whatever the hell you want in any setting, and they don't care too much about the whole morality thing. So you can just kind of make a person and then make them as evil or good as you want. A game that I've found surprisingly evil, or surprisingly evil, is a game that I've referenced a couple times. It's called Red Markets. It's a post-apocalyptic zombie kind of economic horror game, is how it describes itself. Uh, I don't want to say anything more about the setting or the overarching plot because I genuinely mean this. Do not read the lore if you're gonna play Red Markets. It's so depressing and grim and bad that you just won't want to play the game. And I mean that. Like if you read that, some people are just like, I don't want to play this, and then they don't. So
This is bad.
but like,
this is really bad.
but like, even though they don't even factor in morality, me and the other player at the table, Chris, both of us, we started like with some shisty characters, but we've done some real bad shit just over the course of the game trying to get money so we can get out of the zombie apocalypse, which includes figuring out a dude is immune to the blight, which is the zombie plague. And we found it out. He was just this guy who was living in a cave. He'd done the blood test, and he had come back positive that he is immune. And so he celebrated by getting drunk and doing a bunch of pills and other shit. So when we found him, he was passed out, and we're like, oh shit, this guy's immune. How much will the government pay if we sell him to them? So we basically called the U.S. government, like a black site that we knew. And we're like, hey, we got an immune guy over here, and the guy we were talking to immediately was just like, just tell me your position, we'll get you a lot of money. And we're like, okay.
Yeah.
So
okay.
we just straight up sold this dude into medical slavery for like a pretty good amount of cash, by the way. But that was just like the tip of the iceberg. We've also sold out a caravan of people so that way we could get more money. We sold out a group of heroes who were going to try to cross the Mississippi where the internal border of the U.S. is now. We sold them out to the same government so that way they could nuke them from orbit pretty much, and we get paid. They weren't getting over the wall anyway. It's impossible. So, whatever. They were going to die, and we got some cash. It's fine. Right now, since we're nearing the very end of the campaign, our characters are struggling with just the horrible shit that they've done. And it's really affecting our psychology on an in-game level. And out of play, like, there have been a couple times where it has been uncomfortable. Because selling the dude, Nick was like, no, don't do that. That's real bad. But Rambler, which is my character, he was like, nah. No, we gotta sell him. We're gonna get a lot of money.
Lot of goddamn money, bro.
He also already tried to kill you over there. What my character pointed at Chris's. It's like he already tried to kill you anyway with that mine, so he deserves it. Which is how we rationalized it. We invaded his home to go steal his shit, and we got upset that he mined the front entrance and almost killed one of us.
That's today's world's logic. Another thing that you could do where an evil campaign is regarding is something that Nick has mentioned, I think, once before, is the accidental hero.
I wanted to do this. This is one of my in theory things that it sounds super fun to me. I haven't got to do it yet.
So tell us what that is, Nick.
All right. So the accidental hero, you go into whatever game system. We're just going to assume Dungeons and Dragons. You go into D&D. You make a bunch of evil characters. You got like 4 people in your party. It's like chaotic, neutral, lawful, evil. Maybe like a chaotic neutral guy in there or another chaotic evil. And they're out trying to do whatever shiesty shit that they're trying to get away with. Maybe they want to go like destroy a dam so that way it floods the city. So then you have an entire adventure
Holy
about
crap.
that.
That's awesome.
So you go, they destroy the dam, and as they're celebrating at the ruins of this like massive concrete like thing that's crumbling apart, and the rivers are flooding into the city. That's when maybe there had been a fight that broke out within the city that escalated, like a magical fight that escalated to the point where part of the city was on fire. And so as they release the dam, the fires get put out. they miscalculated, and the river actually doesn't go directly into the town because the townsfolk aren't idiots. And so the river gets diverted, the town gets saved from the fire, and then they're up there going, no, no, we saved
No,
everybody. Why did?
dude.
And so like the whole point is like the more evil they try to do, the more good they accidentally do. They get commendations from the mayor. They like get keys to the city. They're like, stop! I'm trying to kill all of you.
That sounds like Dr. Doofenshmirtz from Phineas and Ferb.
I
So
I
funny.
don't know that reference, but yeah, like the whole point is just like everything they do that they think is super evil and twisted is really just them accidentally saving the day and dealing with the frustrations of being heroes in a world where they really, really, really want to be villains. I would love to try that. Just to have all the work that they work towards, and then all of it falls apart in front of them as they're like, "No, we're heroes." Through the will of our dark gods, we have granted you insight into unleashing evil upon the tops of your tables. Not all players will ever participate in an evil campaign, but if you do, we hope that our discussion helps in some way. Thank you all for listening. If you want to hear more podcasts, just subscribe to Starblade, and we'll see you next time on Playing God.
Later, man.